Welcome to the Harpe Bioherbicide podcast. I'm Dr. Alex Danis, and today we're speaking with the CEO and director of Harpe Bioherbicide, Bill Buckner. Bill is an accomplished executive in the agricultural and agritech industry with a resume that includes the Noble Research Institute, the Bayer Group, the Soil Health Institute, CropLife America, and Wilbur Ellis, just to name a few. We spoke with Bill on his farm in North Carolina, where he practices regenerative agriculture. In today's episode, Bill is going to tell us about regenerative agriculture and soil science and why they're both so important to improving the way that we grow food. Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking to me today. I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about Harpe, but also about regenerative agriculture.
Sure.
So can you first introduce yourself and tell me who you are and what you do?
Okay, I'm Bill Buckner, and I'm the CEO of Harpe Bioherbicide Solutions.
And how did you get to this position in your career? What's sort of a little bit of your career path?
Well, I grew up on a farm, so agriculture has been in my life forever, and left the farm after university, and I was in ag finance for a while. Then I went into the animal health side of the business, and then eventually went to Bayer Animal Health, and then I moved to Germany, and after that period of time went to Canada and became involved with the crop protection business. Which was responsible for their ag division, which was crop protection and animal health. And then when I came back to the States, it was just crop protection.
And how did you get involved with Harpe?
Well, Dr. Brummer came out to demonstrate Harpe to me. That was precipitated by a phone call from Aidan Conley, and Chad and Daniel were looking for funds. And I thought, well, if Dr. Brummer has a product that acts like an organic Roundup product, I said I'd be interested in taking a look at it. So Chad drove out, and we went around and sprayed some weeds, and I was very impressed with the efficacy of the product and equally impressed with Chad. And the more I learned and the more he talked, the more interested I became, and I asked the guys if I could join them. I didn't know it was the CEO role, but I just said, I'd like to be part of what you're doing.
I mean, that's not bad to wind up as the CEO if you like the project.
Well, but we joke because we really don't have titles. It is a project, and we're both equally engaged, and so it's been fun.
So when you said Chad came out and he showed you the product, you really mean here. So where are we? Where are we right now?
We're north of Raleigh, about 45 minutes. This is a farm my wife and I bought about 7-8 years ago. And we just fell in love with it, and gave me an opportunity to kind of practice some of the regenerative agriculture ideas that I have. And so this is where Chad came. It's about 45 minutes from
That's all right.
Raleigh. It's about 10 minutes outside of Oxford, North Carolina, a quaint little town.
And we're talking about regenerative agriculture. That's what you're doing out here. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means? What is regenerative agriculture?
Well, it's got the terminology can be different for a lot of different people. For me, what it is, it's about regenerating your land from the conventional ways that we've farmed for the last decades, and it's all about repairing the health of the soil. So it's regenerating the soil so it can be a more resilient ecosystem to grow crops and livestock. And actually just add more biodiversity to the environment itself.
And how do you do that? How do you care for the soil? What are you actually doing when you're thinking about this?
Well, you have to keep in mind, I don't farm for a living.
Sure.
So every farmer truly has its unique challenges. And so this was a way for me to really experiment with different things, such as cover crop mixes, pollinator strips, things of this nature. I just wanted to be able to observe what was taking place and measure it and monitor it and just see what kind of results I get. And it's advantageous for me because I don't have to worry about making a living on this.
Right.
But even on our farm in Missouri, which we are successful in regenerating as well, it was a system of trial and error. And our focus there was mostly on just rebuilding our organic matter and improving our soil structure, which are the building blocks, to achieving some level of soil health. And then really looking at, through soil testing, looking at the impacts that cover crops have made and cycling nutrients and things of this nature. So that's really what it is. It's creating that foundation of soil that you can really develop a thriving ecosystem on.
Well, so thinking a little bit about regenerative agriculture, thinking about sort of the industry as a whole, what kinds of things are needed to sort of move industry or to move the agriculture industry towards these sort of regenerative spaces?
Well, it takes a lot more practical experience. Farmers learn from farmers. That's the best source of information. And the more farmers that dip their toe into this area and share those experiences, the more others will learn and start creeping into this area as well. It's the typical adoption curve, early adopters and later adopters, and it's no different in working with farmers in that respect. But there has to be individuals or organizations or academics that are also supporting those efforts with practical experience, yes, but also the science that goes behind it. And so when you get everybody working collaboratively in that direction, then I think a lot of great things can happen. And so this evolution is happening. It's picking up more and more every year. I've talked to farmers that would be large-scale conventional growers that are actually moving more toward organic. And they've kind of bypassed that regenerative band, if you will, and just trying to get more for their commodity in the organic markets. But also dealing with the troubles that can occur there, and that's primarily weed control, and that's why Harpe is going to be a great product for those that are transitioning to these organic systems. But ideally, you'd like to see people transition conventional to regenerative, and then see the organic systems move from an organic to a regenerative. And again, that's one of the selling features of Harpe, is that platform of products can allow those growers, conventional and organic, to migrate to a more regenerative system that fits both of their markets.
That's interesting that it sort of needs to come from both sides. It's not just conventional that needs to move. It's not just organic that needs to move. But if we want to be sort of making these big changes, we need both sides to sort of meet in this regenerative space.
Exactly. That's exactly what it needs. And the organic growers would love, they're the early adopters. They're probably the epitome of it because they made that conscious decision, but they've got their struggles too. And when it comes down to soil health, it's difficult for them not to use mechanical tillage in order to eliminate their weed problem. So if they have a tool like Harpe that allows them to do so, then you're going to see more of those growers migrate in this regenerative space. Whether they call it that or not, I don't know, but that's what's happening.
When it comes to that, you talk about things like mechanical weed removal and tillage and all of that, or on the other side of things like really harsh herbicides. What are the obstacles that farmers are facing in the herbicide, or maybe the better word is weed control? What are the obstacles they're facing in the weed control area that would make it harder to move towards this regenerative space?
Well, the big part of it is weed resistance, and that's the big issue that we've all been battling for the last 10, 15 years. As more and more Roundup has been used, there's more and more weeds that are Roundup resistance, and now there's a lot more different groups of herbicides that are showing resistance. And the only way to combat it is to use combinations of these herbicides. And so farmers are a little bit strapped in terms of what they feel like that they can do. And as you think about regenerative systems and the use of cover crops in order to create another way of weed control, that's also an area of learning and trial and error. And cover crop usage for that use alone will vary across the country. And so that's why this farmer-to-farmer network is so important, so they can share their experiences of what works well and what doesn't work well. But the equipment companies need to step up, provide better, equipment that supports those types of agronomic practices. You see a lot of farmers, and I've got one just across the road, who just make their own adaptations, and they're very skilled in on-farm engineering, and so there's a lot to learn from that too.
I think that's interesting, just thinking about, we think about sometimes these big sort of changes in an industry coming from one person or two people, or sort of a big overarching group. But it really does sound like it needs to be truly a grassroots thing of like everybody sort of talking to each other and deciding this is how the industry wants to move.
It does. And, but there's so much fractionation in the industry in any case, whether it's by commodity groups or by land grant institutions, and also within the USDA and other government entities, that there's just a lot of fractured nature it's not invented here type of mentality. And, I'll cite one example. When we started the soil renaissance back in 2013, we knew we had to have a cross-section of everybody sitting at the table to solve the soil health issue and understand what research needed to be done in the area of soil biology. And so we had farmers and prominent farmers, conventional and organic. We had academicians from land-grant universities. We had from ARS at the USDA. We had everybody at the table. And everybody got behind that collaborative effort, and it culminated to about 500 people that we had working in this direction. So it can be done. It just takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of energy, and you have people getting on the wagon, you have people getting off the wagon, but that's okay as long as everything's moving forward.
Yeah. I think, too, it sounds like, again, with things like Harpe, this is just going to be a tool in the toolkit. This is going to be one of many things that is going to need to happen to sort of move everyone towards these regenerative methods. Where do you see sort of the needs for those tools in maybe weed reduction and sort of weed, mitigation, but also other places? Like what are sort of all the tools we're going to need to develop in that toolkit?
Well, that's a great question. And you should be asking a true regenerative farmer
Okay.
that question,
Sure.
because they'll tell you what they need. Equipment in various types of equipment are certainly necessary. The more insight that you have into a biological system, the better off you are. And there's companies like Trace Genomics that are really into the deep science of soil biology. They can provide a level of insight, what's going on in the ground, that nobody else can uncover. And while that may not be necessary from a farmer viewpoint today, as they migrate in this area and they become more interested in the biology of the soil that's on their property, they're going to want to know how to mine that and how to make it better. And so insight is really key. So a lot of the work that's being done in ag tech these days to really develop that deep science is going to gravitate up into the toolkit, if you will, for the farmer. So equipment, deep science, technologies, data platforms, things of this nature, I think will be key. But then also, as you start understanding the cycling of nutrients and the use of fertilizers and things of this nature, every regenerative farmer says, I want to do more with less. And so their goal is to reduce the amount of inputs that they're using. And in those early years, you do take a hit. And some farmers aren't in a position to take that hit, and it's a tough thing to go through. So you have to have, potentially some, other government assistance to incentivize farmers for doing that.
Right.
Because it is a land mass that impacts all of us. And so everybody benefits from that land mass that a farmer owns. And so I don't think citizens in a particular watershed would mind paying some additional tax on a water treatment facility or whatever that could manage that water that's coming off these different watersheds. But farmers can keep that water on through the use of regenerative practices.
Right.
And so there's a lot of different needs, and some of it's very local. And so it's, I think it's, like I said, it's a good question, but the answers are out there. But how you formulate all that into one handbook, is a different question.
Yeah, it is a little hard. And the other sort of big, broad question I wanted to talk about that we talked about a little bit earlier is thinking about when we think about Harpe, there's the farmers who are going to benefit from actually having this herbicide, but there are also the farmers who are growing the plants that go into this herbicide. Can you talk a little bit about the circular nature of what could happen if we're using more of these mint oils, sort of taking more of these things, and sort of what that means for, again, not just the farmers using the end product, but the farmers getting to that product?
Sure. So a lot of great mint growers in the Pacific Northwest and in southern Alberta as well. And we visited with a lot of them. And they're excited over the fact that, number one, they've made investments in extracting oil, whether it's hemp oil for CBD uses or whatever. So they're getting better utilization of their facilities. But the idea that it's going into a herbicide, so they can actually grow a mint crop, sell the oil, put the oil into Harpe. They take the fodder, if you will, from the mint leaves and so forth, put it back over on another field, so they're regenerating that land with additional organic matter. But yet they're bringing that end product right back in, and they're using it as a herbicide on the rest of their fields. And so that truly is a circular economy, if you were to think of it in that same light. And, one of the other benefits is that farmers in pockets of the country, of any country, they can raise the mint, extract the mint oil, and move it to a formulation facility very close by that's owned by one of the strategics, if you will, and turn around and have it just in a very local sense. So there's a lot of local economy type of activities in scale that could occur as well. And not to mention the impact on smallholder farmers in India and Africa and everywhere else where we're going to be able to grow these varieties of mint. And surprisingly, there's a lot of work that's being done in developing new varieties of mint too, which that has been created by the mint industry already. Nothing that Harpe has done other than just look at it and say, wow, this is ideal. But it's going to help increase these acres in these different countries. So a lot of great benefits coming out of that supply chain.
Yeah, I think that supply chain issue and sort of, I love the fact that it's not just an end point, right? Like it's something that's going to give back to the communities who are growing them in. It's something where you can take those leaves and bring them back out into the fields. Like it really feels like there are so many sort of paths here that can all sort of help to get us more towards regenerative agriculture and also sort of lifting a bunch of people up as we're doing it, which is really great. My final question.
Sure.
What are you most excited about in this industry, about this product? Like what is the thing that brought you out of retirement to decide, you know what, there's still more that I want to be engaged with here?
Well, it's I'm always attracted to people that think out of the box and have a great idea. May have been told no several different times, and I've always felt like it was going to be cool to be able to be a person that would say yes and actually engage and use my connections and whatever influence I have to help with a project like this. That's extremely gratifying to see like-minded people come together to bring something to not just the United States but to the world, to develop a brand new herbicide that's going to solve so many of the problems that farmers are trying to address in terms of weed control. So having that ability at my stage of my career, it's kind of like icing on the cake. I'm going to be able to, look at it one day and wear my Harpe hat around and say, this is one of the most coolest projects I've ever participated in, and it was in a great group of people to participate in, helping to bring this product to market. So I can't think of anything more fun to do.
Well, that's perfect. I think ending it on a fun note is amazing. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
You're quite welcome, Alex. Thank you.
That wraps up this episode of the Harpe Bioherbicide podcast. Special thanks go out to Bill Buckner and, of course, to our listeners. For more information on today's topic and Harpe Bioherbicide's mission to provide a new environmentally safe and sustainable approach to weed control, visit harpebio.com. I'm Dr. Alex Danis, and we'll see you next time.